Well, I had fun with this one this month.
We can do that.
I did ask the building inspector how many decks without permits we wanted to be in that. That's going through the area. Yeah, for a lot of them. Which kind of brings up what the thing said that Dave and I talked about as well. We really want to make it easy for people to decks to be used. We want people to get permits for them. Trying to get this resolved in a way that makes sense to people and lets them go through the process easily. It's kind of the goal. We've got two alternatives here. One is the more detailed alternative that makes the distinctions we talked about in the last meeting between ground floor and first floor and upper level decks or elevated decks. Some different items there. And then as I worked through it, also came up with this little bit simpler, much simpler alternative that just bases the setback uptake of the deck. So that seemed like that would be anything for people as well. So two alternatives there. I did add a couple things. I was looking at other ordinances from other areas just to kind of get some senses and found a few of these other clauses. Childhood amenities, we don't specifically include that in our ordinance. As far as saying, no, you don't need a building permits. But that's just part of our practice. It would be better to have that in the ordinance. That is pretty standard. I live in the city. We build this.
Then the other thing to point out, I'm sure that you read this, but that as I was digging through, I found old planning commission and ZBA minutes that indicate that one of the big reasons that we have an issue and why we have so many non-conforming decks is that there is a very unusual way of measuring deck height for 15 years, 20 years. I'm not quite sure exactly how long. In 2007, the ZBA ruled and said, no, you should be measuring deck height from where the deck actually is. But there was a period of time where deck height was being measured from either the front property line or the front of the house. I don't remember. So if it was less than 30 inches above the grade as measured from the front of the house, it was permitted in the setback area. No idea how that interpretation came to be, but it explains why we have so many decks built in setbacks. And those decks, that's been 20, 30 years. Those decks are all looking at replacement, which is why this is such a headache. So great time to fix it.
Yeah, I think Mika summed it up well. We should do something, the simpler the better. And if we have a simple ordinance that people can understand, decks get messy. I think that's what the zoning board is for in this case.
Correct.
If we try to define everything with decks, we won't be able to. They're kind of like corner lots. So, Mika, I have a question on your first simple alternative. The first bullet point says setbacks for all decks are relative to the height of the deck. So that's a general statement. For side and rear yards, the height of the deck is the required setback from the lot line. So if you had an 8-foot high deck, it could be 8 feet from the lot line. Except that second bullet says if you're over 15,000 square feet, then it needs to be.
For the rear yard only. So my thinking was with smaller parcels, you want to allow, like I think we talked about at the last meeting, a little bit closer setback. You get into a bigger yard and you want a little bit more of a buffer. So 10 feet, I kind of pulled out of the air because it seemed like it would be a reasonable buffer, but it wouldn't make things, it wouldn't cause an additional problem of not being able to fit a deck in a 15,000 square foot backyard, and that's our minimum lot size for the R3 zoning district, so.
The height of the deck plus 10 feet.
For the rear yard, it's over 15,000 square feet,
Your 8-foot example would be
18 feet.
Yes. So, side yard setback, which is typically 10 feet. Yeah, you could have a 2-foot wide deck. 8 feet high, right? If you were 8 feet up. If you want an 8-foot high deck, you're going to come out 2 feet, because then you'd be 8 feet from the property line.
You mean come out 2 feet from the edge of the house if you had
The
an
edge of the house.
on the side? Yes, yes.
Just trying to picture on all these things as we had a dog named TJ, who no matter what we did, figured out a way to mess it up.
Somebody's gonna mess it up, probably next week, yeah.
I'm trying to think like TJ. Is the side yard setbacks 10 or 15?
It's 10 in, it's 10 in most zoning districts, I think. Is it 15 in R1? It might be, I'll look it up a second. It's 10, 10 is the one I use most. Yeah.
Sure. But then if you had a 10-foot side yard, you could build a 3-foot wide deck. Still have 7 feet or 4 foot wide, 4 foot high. Excuse me, 3 feet high, and it could be, you have to be 7 feet. Just trying to picture. The lower the deck, closer to the property line. But if the sides are the side yard on a slope, where do you measure the height of the deck? Or can it widen out as it gets shallow? That's what I see. We need him.
Well, I'm thinking, I'm going through this thinking of all the variations,
Yeah.
you know, and this is really complex,
Mhm.
you know. And I'm even thinking like the rear setback plus the height of the deck. Well, you know, what if my neighbor's lot is different than mine, if his land's a little bit higher, I can bring mine back. You know, I have to be 18 feet from the lot line, he'll have to be 17 feet,
Mhm.
you know, because it slopes upwards.
Mhm.
You know.
Or if his house, I mean, the houses have different grades for the sliders too. They
Right,
can be a little bit
exactly.
different.
So there's so many variations, and it could be neighbor to neighbor to neighbor.
Mhm.
So. I'm more in favor of just, you know, forget the height of the deck, forget percentages, just make it a number. That would be my preference to see. I mean, if you want to simplify it.
Yeah, and if you wanted to do that and just make it a number, you would probably want to do that number either based on the property size or the zoning district or something along those lines. I would think. It does, yeah, well, because
Variance, yeah, you gotta look at everything.
so I have
It's
a
like there's
page-long spreadsheet on just setbacks.
To get the space. All right.
That's that big area to look through the deck.
We deck design.
So where is the height of the deck measured?
Yeah,
You know,
so-
I mean, is it measured at the house? Is it measured at the highest point?
I mean, I think you could, yeah, I think that would be, I think that's a great question. You could make that rule. You could say based on the highest point of the deck. So if it at any point is 10 feet off the ground, then that's a 10-foot required setback. Based on the 2018 contours is how you have building height measured, so, which people love.
Disallow that.
You're really right, it's complicated.
Yeah, I mean, there's all of a sudden, there's so many practicality, and you go,
I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
the earth is not flat.
right, and, you know, in order to get what I need, you know, I dig a hole, so yeah.
And then, like I said, you got variation from neighbor to neighbor. It's like, hey, how come you can do that and I can't? Or in there, that mine's whatever it is.
Then the recording works a lot better. You should try that. Everybody here should spend time listening to the recordings if you need them.
Well, we've got a couple of parts of this to address, right? We can break it down.
Go ahead.
Well, I guess the first thing I look at is maybe you said the problem kind of propagated because of deck being rebuilt and stuff like that. Is there any way to like grandfather an existing deck in? I know it's gonna be hard to keep track of that yet, add more complexity to it because it's like, I think that's an 18-year-old, we grandfather 20 years or whatever. But if somebody comes and wants to rebuild it for a permit, say, that's fine, it has to be the exact same footprint.
I would want to check with Dan just to make sure that there weren't some. We have to treat everybody kind of the same, not kind of the same way, treat everybody the same way to make sure that there weren't an issue with that.
Right.
I think the bigger problem is that there are so many decks that have been built without permits at all, that it's kind of like, well, then if you get away with it, then you can build whatever you want, in which point just let people build whatever they want. But we can do that. And I think that that was a practice for a period of time, was if it's there, just let them rebuild it.
Yeah, you can't, I mean, I could rebuild my deck without taking it down and get the whole thing moved, replace it for that board. I mean, if that's the way, you know,
Yeah.
if you have to work around it and still have the same deck, there's basically.
Yeah, I think I have an application that just went through that's similar to that.
Just rebuild it.
They're just skinning it. So they're not replacing the structural members, they're just putting the new boards on.
New deck boards.
Yeah, yeah.
But he did come in for building.
For a permit, yeah,
For a permit.
yes.
I did see that on our wall.
Our B and Z is pretty, it's just, no, our requirements for a building permit are pretty stringent.
Yeah, they were also, there's, yeah, a ton. Yeah, and I don't actually know. That was part of a larger application that also was rebuilding a portion of the deck. This part was in the setback, and so I think that might have been their workaround. I don't know that we actually require that. That's a building inspector question. It's not one that I would see necessarily.
Well, I mean, yeah, we're talking about skinning it, and when you have to come back, if you're doing, 5 boards at a time over 5 years, I mean, really, how stringent do we want to be? Because admittedly, my deck, I've replaced a board
Sure.
like once every 3 years. I mean, we're nowhere near.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, right, but if someone was trying to get around it, you like plan out, I need to do X number of boards this year and next year and whatever, like same thing, right? Like,
I'm right at that 20 years. My house was built in 2000, I'm at 24 now. So, when I moved into the house, I got a bunch of long screws and some wood filler and said, it'll probably last 3 more years. Well, it's time for the rails to come off and all that. And, we're talking some other things. And I need to be careful here because we're thinking about doing some things. But I think we need to seriously think about grandfathering some of this somehow. I don't know how we do that, but if we've got that, how many houses built in the 80s and 90s and 2000, early 2000s that are in that situation that were possibly established from the setback based on the front of the thing, and all of a sudden we're saying we have new rules and now you comply. I think that's a major issue in my opinion.
Let's keep that in mind, and whatever we come up with on what the rules are, we can say add a grandfather section. But we still need some kind of rules. Right, when we could have some detailed alternatives, ground level, up to 24 inches height with no railing and 2 feet height. We currently allow concrete pads right up to the line. Ground level is in the phone. But last time we talked about dividing it into 3 low, medium, and high. I still think that's not a bad way to approach it. We need to make some kind of progress.
So the way that I had that broken down for the 3 types, defining ground level is up to 24 inches in height, which is a little bit lower, 6 inches lower than current. That gives just a little bit of wiggle room, because occasionally we'll get somebody who mismeasures and then they have a problem if they have to add a rail. The ZBA had one of those with a walkway pretty recently. That at 2 feet from the lot line. First floor decks, this was kind of a stab in the dark, but I said 5 feet, up to 5 feet, would be that first floor deck. And that would include anything also that had a railing on it. So that would be that first floor deck level, side setback at 10 feet. And then a couple different rear setbacks, 10 feet or 5 feet if it's less than 6,500 square feet for a parcel. That's pretty small for Park Township. That's a pretty small parcel, but we do have neighborhoods that have quite a few of those. And then elevated decks, so anything over 5 feet. And I had a couple alternatives for that. I think this is the elevated decks, it strikes me as really the trickiest one. The others are kind of splitting hairs about, you know, just general preferences. The elevated decks with the privacy questions, I think are the more challenging, especially because of how things have been built in the past. And that's height of deck or side setback plus the height of deck, or side setback plus half the height of deck, a few different formulas there. And then Dave had a question about this. So then on the following pages, I had some sample setbacks with visual examples. And these aren't precise measurements. So I used Ottawa County GIS for this. It's really tough to get that to come up with an exact number. So I spent more time than I probably should have trying to get that exact number. So, you know, yes, this is one of those cases where 10 plus 2 equals 13.73. So, and that has the 2 possibilities that I illustrated, which showed the required rear yard setback if it were 70% of the setback of the required setback of the property. And what was the other thing? There were 2. Was it and then I think I just showed the setback from the property line, and that was for the rear. And then did something similar for the side to show what a couple different alternatives would look like on these sample properties.
But from the start, decks typically are at the level of the floor of the house. So you can walk out of the house that could sink level. And we use the definition of height or of the house to set the deck level. Of course, we have to interview it. But call it apart. But
Say more about that. What would that?
the question was, how do you measure the height of the deck? So is the height measured from, say, if you have the walkout, the floor of the walkout?
I think it would be best to measure it from, and we can do averaging if need be, with the footprint of the deck. If we do the footprint of the structure, we're actually back to that old interpretation. The height of the structure is kind of measured from the 4 sides of the house.
Right.
Top of the deck boards.
The deck
I have an answer for that one.
is to the deck. To the deck.
On the definition of first floor decks, up to 60 inches, 5 feet in height measured from the deck to deck. Can you help me out with that?
It was really late, Terry, when I finished.
It's
the deck of the deck.
Do what?
She left out goose. And deck goose.
Well, right there in here, goose. Okay, so double.
Let's break it down. In Dan's point. The ground level decks up to 24 inches in height, no railing, within 2 feet of any lot line. Anybody ever complain about that? Does that seem reasonable?
I think 2 feet's too close.
Okay. 5 feet.
When you get into smaller properties, that's when it gets to be a little bit of trickier.
But we did address small properties.
Yeah.
And then it was a immediate place.
Mhm. So would you want to see a smaller, go ahead, discuss.
Well, you got 5 feet for me.
Yeah,
At least bring it, at least there's a buffer, right?
right.
5 feet is roughly here, and
Stand up.
6 inches lower. That's very reasonable.
I can get a tape measure if you would like one. You would have to recess for me to, or just let me walk away.
So let's just. 2 feet too short, 5 feet is okay, somewhere in, I think might be okay, but why don't we say 5 feet? Yeah, but at least a lot.
If the structure itself is 3 feet away from the lot line, would you like to make an exception for, to line up with the side of the house or not really?
If the house is that close.
Mhm. Non-conforming old house, old neighborhood.
I think it should be pretty- That's my. In other words, she's saying if the house is 3 feet from the property line, and the deck just be in the same line as the house, they have to step it in.
That's something for you. That's something for the. That's something for the
It would
variance.
be, yeah.
They would CBA.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine.
I don't think.
They could go to ZBA, you're still gonna have.
Yeah. We still will, yeah.
All right, first floor deck's up to 5 feet in height notice from the deck. And any deck. New ground level 48 feet, that also includes the railing, so that 48 is to the deck, right?
Yeah, and that, sorry, that actually should be 60, that should be the same.
So that's saying side setback, and we have the same question here, it's going to be in line with the house.
Oh, I see.
But not less than 60. Same, yeah. Not less than 5 feet. Rear yard, and if we. But it was 5 feet. Are you comfortable with that section? Then we're under the tricky bit of that. Over 68 inches. Hey,
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not clear on what we're doing here with the railing. Railing needs to be what, 3 feet, 36 inches at least?
that's correct, but
There's
So-
a code for that.
but we're measuring to the floor. Top of
But it says, and 60 inches, that includes the railing.
That's,
If the deck is lower than 60 inches, but also includes a railing. right?
Yeah, so if
Up
it's
to
low enough,
60 inches.
yeah, so anything that has, say, if it's 24 inches off the ground, but it also has a railing, then it has to meet the setback requirement for the taller deck.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
All right, now taller decks. So the first alternative suggested, these are ones that are over 5 feet, so the side setback would be the height of the deck, which at 5 feet with 5 feet. That's fairly close, or the side setback plus the height. 6 foot, 6.
But you said for the, oh no, for first floor, you said 5 feet, right? Okay.
Having it just be the height of the deck seems really intrusive. Floors and my stories. Stay there, but I would like to see this now. Well, for the low one, they have 5 foot. For the medium, instead of that, even on the elevator, that's. Yeah, I think with that, I mean, every deck's different. Like I said, you were looking at all those plans and you're.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Well, in which case, if you go to Dave, they give them number for minor decks.
Side or rear? Side and rear.
I mean, I keep thinking about it, so, man, put the deck, so it's 10 feet from the deck line. Also, they care, also one of my house did.
Past the hours.
Yeah.
Well, I think I shared with you, the house I had in Bloomington,
Yeah.
had 1,200 square feet of height. Yeah. And it didn't go to the lot line. I mean, I was still a long way from the lot line, and yeah, it cost as much as my house, but it was multi-leveled and was probably 40 inches at the highest point. But I thought the 70% wasn't a bad approach for the rear yard setback.
Again, you're just entering a variable, so.
I understand.
In my mind, it's either consistency.
I would agree with that. And we are trying to make it easier for everyone in the township when they're trying to figure out what they're supposed to be doing. So I do think it would be easier to give them a number than relying on everyone to do math.
And I think we've been hearing too that, from on a number of occasions that it's difficult to build in Park Township. Because we have a lot of constraints. And again, I haven't been here long enough or had any construction done to validate that. But if we're trying to get to a simpler model, we're gonna get requests for variances. So I do think that we have to fix.
So you think first floor decks and elevated, I would be about the same, be the same? 10 feet or 5 feet.
So you would modify the first two bullet points here.
Well, for low and medium, yeah,
So those are 5 feet. And once you get about that, you gotta go 10 feet. 6 foot.
yeah, I mean,
I
I don't care what the number is, I mean, it's like, to say, well, give it 50, fine for that, or it's just. And again, not to be. The third one, you know, a lot of yards are slow, so we're doing it at the height of that. At the highest point.
And that's a good point, that we've struggled over the years to say, oh, I have a house, right, there's 35 of them in the house, right, where we measured that.
Well, we established that.
Right, that's good.
We did, but I tell you what, I don't like the averaging. Because, you know, I've shared with you before, the house next to me put a barn together. I got 60 feet of wall that's over the 35 limit because of the sloping of the land. So one side of the house is very low. And the averaging came out that he can go up.
So I think Dave Rogers here, that we simplify and take height out of the question. We don't have to worry about that if it starts horizontal.
Sounds very easy.
And then if
I like
anybody else does anything different, they can look up to them.
Right.
And they will.
Yeah.
We'll flip a coin.
That's
Right.
then you can rate this to cover the exceptions. So,
It's possible.
yeah,
To go back to my comments about the averaging, I think we need to look at that and say you can average, but it can't be over X number of feet. When we're measuring the height for various buildings in some of our.
This is the building height.
Right. Not great.
Okay, so that's side and then rear yard. Just to be clear. We have a 70% of inquiries. Waterfront is its own thing, and we don't want to touch them.
Too many variables.
So rear yard, did you also land on 10 feet? So is everything 10 feet from side and rear then for elevated? Is that where you landed?
See, I mean, that's certainly a simple reason. And as we were saying, if you have good size line, you're not going to build a deck near the wall. That should be 6 feet. Keep my difference.
I'm gonna keep doing one more in 3 years.
So seriously?
Yeah. Yep.
yeah, but maybe if you use that.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's expensive.
Yeah.
So if we do a straight 10 feet in the rear, one of the things that are concerned is privacy. If that allows people to get too close, I don't. Might be a rare occasion where someone wants to build such a big deck that would. Hold on. Hold that back. Right, same thing. They're still gonna do it. And on small lots, that allows people to put it back. They're already small. I think it's a reasonable.
I think we try it for a year and then see if we get a bunch of issues, then we know that within a year, but it. In a year, are you trying to get rid of me, too? or-
Okay, Mika, could you lead us through the additional regulation?
Yes. So corner lots, meeting side yard setback standards. But I think you just set the side and the rear is the same, right?
Yeah.
So that would be scratched. Beach stairs, elevated walkways, et cetera, 10 feet from the side property lines. That's, we don't see this a whole lot. We've gotten a few complaints about it. Where somebody's trying to preserve their own view kind of at the expense of their neighbors. So just to say, beach walkways need to be 10 feet away from the property line. Because those are the rails and Lake Michigan views and all of that. Unless they are working together and have a written agreement that they're going to share that, in which case I think we should allow that. That would be my suggestion. Did you want to stop and talk about those or just keep going?
Anybody? Sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I think we're good. I'm good.
And then the childhood amenities, 3 feet away from the lot lines, but otherwise. And I pulled that directly from a different ordinance. So if you want to talk about what that number should be, but just codify what the practice has always been, what is kind of standard practice. Just say we're not gonna wade into that. Thoughts?
Yeah, I don't think we have 3 circles.
Mhm.
Yeah, I don't think
With 5.
those things in category are hugely significant.
You may not have a lot of flexibility at a tree house. You gotta put a big tree house.
It's still gotta go in your yard.
But Jack can't believe her whole picture bottom line.
Okay.
I'm still not comfortable at 3 feet. I think that's really, put a tree house 3 feet from my lot line, come on. Or even a place point, I mean,
So the assumption here, I think, is that most playground equipment is ground floor. Like, well, slides and swings and stuff. The tree house is a little bit like a little bit. Except tree houses show the
Yeah, I mean, if we want to get technical, I would remove tree houses from that section. Because, I mean, really, a slide or a swing set or like a tiny little playhouse. I mean, because if the playhouse is too large, it's an accessory building.
well, the accessory building is 5 feet. Why would we want anything closer than 5 feet? You buy a barn or a garden shed, gotta be 5 feet.
But you said 3 feet is what it is currently?
No, I pulled this
Okay.
directly from a different ordinance, so we don't have anything currently.
I'm just saying, any structure. You know. Kids can be accessory. Kids are very, very loud.
I don't think those 2 feet are gonna make them much quieter. It's not personal experience.
That's just my opinion. Why would it be any different than a barn or a shed or?
Swing set, it's.
Yeah.
The road's different.
Okay. I'm not just,
I mean,
I could probably go either way. I lean towards 5 feet.
I think 5 feet is good.
Good. And I mean, tree houses, I don't think we're.
Yeah, a tree to begin with. Although most of them are now on stilts.
All right, administrative approval.
Okay, so this is something that you put into the code right before I got here for some accessory building sizes. to keep as many things from having to go to the ZBA. So this is just something to consider. If somebody is asking for something pretty small, if that could be something that you'd want to have internally approved in the office. And so basically that has me or whoever is in my office in this role, looking at the application really through the eyes of the ZBA, and to say, okay, is this going to bother anybody? Is this, basically, is this significant and is it going to bother anybody? And if the answer is no, then okay. And so this limits it to 20%. We'd have to, I can do that math quick to see what that would be. Right, that sort of thing. And then the other thing, I don't know that this is on here. We could also add a reporting to that too, to say, and then that any administrative approvals. I think I'm going to start doing this for accessory structures, even though it's not a requirement. To report that to the ZBA, just to say this administrative approval was made this month, this administrative approval, to kind of keep it in line. So just a thought you can discuss.
That's an improvement over the way it's been done in the past.
And it could be, like, this only applies to numbers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you have some questions to ask. One question I have is, well, no, it only comes up if somebody actually wants to. Not everybody will say, well, then the rule isn't 10 feet, it's 8 feet.
Right. And so that's and so I could even come up with a couple others like we talked about. Or is there a minimum, or is it, I think one of the questions I have here is it in keeping with other existing structures in the neighborhood? So partly thinking some of these neighborhoods that are non-conforming, if somebody wants to rebuild something that's really similar to what they have and it's a foot off, or that sort of thing. If all the other decks in the neighborhood look that way already, if it's something that's really different than already exists, then it wouldn't really make any sense. And that's kind of the sort of thing I bring to the ZBA too, even with just general houses. If you're in a neighborhood where everybody has a different setback, that's a much easier variance to grant than when everybody is lined right up exactly. So it's kind of what's in keeping with the neighborhood is the idea.
Does it make sense to have something about self-imposed? The CBA always is self-imposed problem, I think, opposed to your lives like shape.
Yeah, we could do something like
I
that.
just want to figure that.
That's usually what people. Yeah, but we could do. Yeah, let me think through that, but I can add something like that and see what language I can come up with to discuss next time.
What I don't want to end up is you have the 10-foot roadway, so.
Yep, I get that. That makes sense.
Perhaps we could draft some standards that have to be met in order to have the 20% rate.
Yeah. Like, so I have some standards here on page 3, tighten them up a little bit more, so it's a little bit more specific.
Then and maybe you already do this with any administrative that you do, but does that become part of the minutes then for the ZBA in order to be approved?
It doesn't currently, no. Well, so if it were an administrative approval, it would be approved internally. What I think is something that we could improve, and actually, let me finish my sentence. What I think we could improve is adding a reporting requirement. So then to say with the decks, and I am thinking also making a note here to add that as well for the I think it's the size of the accessory building, just to say that should be reported to the ZBA. And that way, if I or someone in the future starts approving things that are outside of what the ZBA is comfortable with, then that would be kind of a check on that. I think I would like that. I'm always trying to stay in line with the ZBA, but it's.
And I believe the ZBA would like that too.
pool and sport courts, so the number here is 15 feet. Larger than 10, most of those are ground level.
I think those are a little noisier activities than sitting on your deck, though.
Yeah. Any questions, thoughts on that 15-foot for those? I think it, again, it doesn't make it much wider, but it keeps the ball from going across the other. Okay, and then the pool is a 10 feet plus the elevation of the deck.
Which made a little more sense when everything was based on the elevation of the deck.
Right, so this may be a 10-foot per decks.
Yeah, it's just would be predator.
Mhm. Yeah,
So whichever.
3, 4 feet, yeah.
Why would we make swimming pools further away from decks?
Well, yeah. Well, I mean, how many kids do you see like hitting batting balls around or whatever? I mean, same thing as sports courts, like
Yeah.
you're more likely to have objects flying and it keeps it more likely to stay on your property.
So let's say 15 feet. Yeah. 11 feet 3 inches. Everybody good enough on that?
Yep.
Okay, prohibited shipping containers, semi-trailers, inoperable vehicles. Boats. You can't use an old car as storage. Or you can't put a motorhome as your accessory building. Can't roll 2 cars together and call it 2 cars. Like that, any of that?
You laugh.
Have friends who the township didn't care.
Humanity is vast.
Anything else on this week? We need anything else this week?
Nope, I don't think so.
Hope that this will be an improvement.
Mhm.
It will be.
Very clear, very simple.
Thank you, number 7, food trucks. I'll just, before Mika does a friend of ours, did graduate from high school and had a food truck drive. Yeah, $60. So it was kind of a bad to start. And actually it was pretty quiet. I congratulated them. They had their generator running kind of built into the truck underneath, and it was sound insulated and looked pretty good.
Yeah, and I think that might be the most common way, but I know at Tulip Time, there were one or two places where there was a loud external generator, so I think I included something on that there. Mr. Martin also sent a couple comments in, and there are a couple typos in here that would need to be corrected as well. And so his comment, I'll just mention specifically, was on page 3 under section, it's the number 5 under page 3, which is the part about approval of the township manager. So page, yeah, so section, it's above section 3, it's actually in section 2. And so that is Dan suggested adding some standards for that to evaluate. So I may, if you would like, I can add some of those. I didn't have time to come up with any after I got his comments. Otherwise, this is intended to allow for food truck operation in the township. The idea is that it's meant to stay in generally commercial type areas. It would allow for food trucks, for example, at Tanglewood Winery is one example where I know they have those out there. You've got the building already, you've got the bathrooms already, you have the electrical hookups already, you kind of have that set up already for that kind of use. We don't have very many restaurants in Park Township, so the competition which comes up sometimes, isn't so much of an issue. And then just limited use in other areas in the township. It's meant to be pretty simple and pretty straightforward and pretty expansive. And then if we start seeing issues or if it becomes problematic, then we kind of pull it in. Food trucks have to be licensed, I think through the county. I was trying to understand food licensing and didn't have time to get as deep into it as I would have liked, but it basically is through, I think the county is authorized to license through the state. But they're licensed as far as food safety goes, so I don't have a whole lot of concern on that point. And then the only other thing, I don't require, in this draft, I didn't require registration for any kind of food truck, like if they're out here for a day. Thought that just seemed kind of onerous, but if they're gonna operate regularly within the township, then we would want to just be able to give them a call if we need to, so.
An example would be the regatta that Yacht Basin Marina puts on for a fundraiser for hospice. And if they wanted to bring in 2 food trucks, they have all the other amenities that would be required, and so that would be approved.
Yes, yeah, that would be a by right. I think that would be a by right use.
Very good.
Yeah. Yeah, that just seemed like a different beast.
Yeah, I've got my truck set up somewhere.
Yeah, that's fair.
We don't have it within stands or you got to eat.
No, not yet.
Yeah, you can spend time in the guys who push the trucks in the seat. Yeah, totally.
We do get inquiries every now and then. People, want to, usually coming from someplace else, want to sell this or that. I'm usually thinking, boy, I'd really like to buy that, but I don't want to regulate it. But yeah, we could strike that clause.
Yeah,
If you just wanted to have it.
Make sure it drives in or pushes in or pedals in or.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think Dan had some suggestions, just to clarify food trailer, that would be just definition wise. So I would change that for next time.
Did you get the typos in A1?
I did.
I had to read it several times. Maybe to operate in a privately owned lot of record existing commercial business operates in the building. I think it means it's a legitimate commercial business.
Yes.
H2. Near the top, that it's referring back to the commercial. It says a lot about 8 AM to 9 PM. Down to the residential, 9 AM to 9 PM.
Yeah, there is mainly because it's residential, and I thought maybe in a residential area, we want to protect the morning and the evening a little bit more. So that was the thinking behind it. I think in the commercial, I also said, or until 30 minutes after sunset so this time of year when sunset's late, you might want to let people.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You really think the cheap is 6 minutes every day.
Yes.
I don't see a need for that. I'd say it's 9 o'clock and you're
Yeah,
done.
I would be set in there. I mean,
Okay.
that's like, plus the pay for that.
All right,
Sounds good.
It's gonna confuse people.
right.
What do you mean I'm late?
So we're taking the
I think so.
And are you happy with 9 PM then? I mean,
Yeah, fine.
this time of year.
Yeah, I just want to know the difference.
So generally I think I understand the intent for residential. we're intending a food truck for no more than 3 events in a year.
Mhm.
My concern, since we're
Mhm.
not enforcing other activities, and there's urgency behind getting this ordinance published, is that it will still leave us having people enjoying these activities, abusing the rules, and without having some clause. We may have extended food trucks in residential areas.
Mhm.
I don't want that next door, basically. is- Yeah,
Yeah, I did think about that when I was putting this together and I was, and I can run this by Dan too, because I was even debating. I was debating saying you can't have these at short-term rentals, but you're not supposed to have a short-term rental, so that I can run that by Dan. though,
yeah. Well, so
spec- more
that's what I was
specifically.
thinking. Like our intent is it's like one event, like a day per food truck. Like we're not intending, again, because these activities are not supposed to be taking place. They're not supposed to be having parties or family reunions. They are.
Mhm.
But if they're having family reunions and it's technically allowed, I don't want this in my neighborhood for 3 days while I already also have a family reunion in my neighborhood for 3 days. Or
So would it be, if it's, so my concern when I was thinking about the short-term rental specifically is that it wouldn't be just 3 days. It would be anybody that comes in will then get this and this and this and this. And so instead of just being the 3 days, it would be,
I mean,
extended periods of time.
that issue obviously complicates a whole lot of other things.
Yeah.
But that was for me, like the one piece that I was like, ooh, like my first thought was, I don't want this next door for like 3 days. I don't like it next door anyway. It's a nuisance, but, I don't know if we have good guidance or, I'm not totally opposed to it because I understand the intent. And if people are gonna break the rules, clearly they're breaking the rules anyway. It just,
Two thoughts. One difference is that we're legally constrained from enforcing short-term rentals. We're not legally constrained from enforcing anything else. And we know how difficult the nuisances are to actually enforce. And so that's kind of why we want the regulation and the banning and all that kind of thing. So that's one piece, is that if someone is out there with a food truck on day 3, day 4, day 5, day whatever, we can enforce that and we can send our officer out there and say, you gotta go. The other thing is that we could add some language to say this, non-consecutive days or something
Yeah,
along those
yeah.
lines.
I would like that if
Okay.
we could.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I don't know. I'm not gonna go there. But yes, if we could have some sort of language, because I am assuming that's the intent, right?
Mhm.
Is you want to have it available when you're having these celebrations. And for most of us, that would be reasonable. And generally we could align to it, but I am obviously sensitive to some of the other particular issues that may arise.
In 3 days, is that too many?
I mean, I don't see it, for individual events. In a regular neighborhood, I think that's perfectly reasonable because we're not usually having people with all of those events. More than that, it's,
2 days in the road.
yeah. in the neighborhood.
Non-consecutive, I think,
Yeah.
And we also don't want to have it like professional garage sales.
Yeah, this does not include garage sales or other similar events.
Mhm.
Where is that covered then?
It's not. So this is saying there's no food trucks at garage sales. So if you wanted to add that, you could, but this is saying in residential areas, this is for closed parties.
I don't go to garage sales, but are there food trucks at garage sales? I mean, if they.
I've gotten requests before. I don't know if there are.
I mean, I suppose if a whole neighborhood was planning.
When one big subdivision has a subdivision garage sale, is there a request coming in for food trucks, or does food trucks show up?
I don't garage sales, so I don't know that for sure, but I have gotten requests for food trucks at garage sales. So under that same one that I had just mentioned at the beginning, page 3.5, food trucks may occasionally be permitted to operate within the right of way for community events such as block parties, etc. We could maybe to that one. Say that there could be some kind of permit. Required. You know, like if for a block, for something similar, like for a community thing, I was trying to keep it a little simpler, and so I didn't include that, but we could add something like that for our neighborhood garage sales for that sort of thing, that would be, you know, certain standards needed to be met, and then it would be, there'd be a permit issued.
We already have in here with the written consent to the township manager.
Yeah, that's for, that is talking specifically location wise within the right of way.
Right.
So we would just, if you wanted to go that direction, we just expand that language a little bit.
Yeah, I'd be comfortable with that.
Yeah, I'd like that too.
And are you thinking community garage sales? Are you thinking one person next door having a garage sale with food trucks?
Yes.
Okay.
Don't make it complicated.
Okay.
You know.
I don't think being specific to the number of things, or probably wouldn't be productive.
You know, what's a community garage sale? 2 people want there or 50
Yeah.
people, you know?
I would say, I would suggest the former and not the latter. And your justification is that if the neighborhood like Sunset Bluffs is having a yard sale or a garage sale each house, that's going to take up a great portion of the morning for those that are up there. And so a food truck might appear to be a reasonable accommodation. But for one household, a garage sale, you know.
And I think you could get pretty quickly into people who are doing that specifically just to have the food truck out, or hosting a food truck or something like that, which would kind of expand that a little bit. Could be fun, but it could be disruptive.
I'm thinking some of the huge estate sales. Just a single location.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't you have a food truck there? I don't need garage sales, but the estate sales.
Yeah, I'll just say, I don't love the idea of having a food truck for the open public for individual residential activities, because it's residential, and I wouldn't be in favor of intentionally then bringing additional businesses to my neighborhood, because it comes with a whole other host of challenges and problems. So I think it makes sense if there's truly a neighborhood-wide event, whether it's a neighborhood block party or a neighborhood garage sale. I don't know that we need, like, if it's truly a neighborhood event and the neighbors are all notified and aware and invited to participate, I think is very different than an individual singular event and having the opportunity to do
Yeah,
that.
it's a good observation.
Fuzzy line.
No, because those would be like, I mean, by invitation, right? Yeah, a closed event. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't want one person have a garage sale and then have a food truck, advertise the food truck, and just have all of the traffic coming to our neighborhood because the food truck's there. And don't get me wrong, I think they would show up. I don't want that in my neighborhood. Right.
Every weekend.
She obviously never had a good
I mean,
eating ice cream.
I think it opens the door to operating more businesses in the residential neighborhoods, and that's obviously been a point of contention for those of us that have businesses in neighborhoods.
And garage sales are.
The garage sale is a commercial, it's a commercial
You
activity.
gonna keep my good humor ice cream truck out of your neighborhood?
Okay, permanent for, with planning commission approval of 4 and file page 2. Or more food trucks with planning commission approval, permanent or semi.
So this is probably the most complicated one, and I debated leaving it off altogether, and thought, what else are we gonna do? So this is for, there are areas where there are permanent food truck courts. And so you could have a piece of property similar to where the Wakazoo Market is right now, and you could have something set up there permanently. There are some requirements for that there, which is why I actually need to spend a little more time with this before I bring it back to you, but as far as what licenses are required outside of Park Township in order to have food stuff. This would say, if you're gonna do that, you have to have a building. You know, you have to have the ability to wash food, to wash hands and things like that. You have to have a bathroom. The vendors would be temporary, but the installation would be permanent or semi-permanent, might not be year round, but that sort of thing. So that's the idea. The way that I drew it up and would be, it basically would be allowed along Ottawa Beach Road. There might be one or two other areas, but it has to be within a half mile of a commercial parcel, and it has to be on a busy road, which is kind of what we have here. Just don't want it to be wandering out into the neighborhoods, don't want it to be, out in the middle of nowhere, but in that area. And, you could add something to say for another location. You could also have that, if you wanted to have that ability to grant as a planning commission too. So if it's too much for right now, we can strike it, but that was kind of the thought behind it. I know that's a fun thing that happens some places, so.
My question is why make within a half mile of commercial? That one doesn't really connect, I would think, on a commercial lot.
Because we only have about 4 of those.
Right.
That's the reason. I mean, I was really looking, is there a way that we can do this without creating a new overlay district, without changing any zoning, without that sort of thing? The idea being, can we be expansive in this? And if it's too fuzzy, then, we scratch it or we say just commercial, that's fine too. Yeah, and they can request a rezoning if that's something that they want to do as well, if it's in that type of area.
We're overwhelmed with requests for this.
Okay.
2640, a half mile within. Give me an example where that might happen. What would that be like?
I think it'd be sort of in a sort of commercial district.
Ottawa Beach Road.
Yeah. Point is, we have hardly any commercial, so basically we can't do this, so if we want to allow it,
Or creative.
yeah.
And we just say, Ottawa Beach Road?
I can find out. I looked. There might be 1 or 2 spots on South Shore Drive where I was like, wow. But it's a special use, so that would be something that the planning commission would be looking at. But yeah, and I would want to check with Dan just to make sure that, what I will, because I don't want to create an overlay district. We wanted to try to keep it simple. So that's what I was trying to allow, but avoiding that. But if we want to specify Ottawa Beach Road, I can check with Dan and see if that's closer.
I mean, if we leave it for commercial now, we see what kind of demand there is for this type of installation. We can always revisit it. Based on the types of requests we're getting, understand if an overlay or, those identified opportunity would be better suited for a rezoning request. I think it would make it cleaner. I know we don't have that many, but it would force us to have something that's tangible instead of trying to figure out how to navigate Ottawa Beach Road. I mean, realistically, I would assume there's, quite a few considerations. Even having a permanent installation and having this whole other host of things, if we're adding another opportunity that doesn't exist today to turn off onto Ottawa Beach Road, and where is that going to be? And does it make sense for the safety of the individuals trying to, go there? I would be inclined to keep it at commercial for now, and then come back and reconsider if we get interest or a significant interest. You know, if we have several requests or inquiries saying, yes, we are in fact interested in doing this, I think it changes it from, yes, you can do it if right now you meet this criteria. But gives us an opportunity to vet it out a little more before trying to come up with a simple but kind of arbitrary, complicated guideline.
All right, commercial?
And the testing waters, they can't work in a strict and the disease off there. Yep.
Large regional festival. That's a fuzzy word, if you look at it, Government Fair, held in the festival. All right, on to the next thing, which is the annual report.
I'm not gonna talk too much about this. I think it's self-explanatory. It's just a summary. It's legally required, which is why you have it, and it's just a summary of what you've done this year. So, and it has some stuff that the board has done as well, which I think could be interesting for you guys to read. So your attendance, the meetings that we had, zoning ordinance amendments, you know, most of the time in the past year was spent on the master plan. So some of these lists are a little shorter than they would be in future years. I mean, we've got 2 ordinances we're looking at right now. So, yeah, you can see here all the sorts of things that the ZBA did this year and that the township board did as well. So that is a summary of the year. If you guys have questions, I'm happy to answer them. Well done. Good work.
My only question is we did some things where we denied some applications.
Mhm.
Would that not be appropriate to be in the report also?
On
That's a good question.
in, let's see, what section were you thinking of? Like for the planning commission or for the
Well,
Township
yeah,
board?
I'm talking about development application and other reviews. So,
what, yeah, are you thinking of when you had tabled them? Or did I miss one?
I don't remember what exactly, well, I think we denied a request for the site plan, not site plan, but yeah, I guess it was a site plan for the property on James Street.
Was it the rezoning request there?
Yeah. The planning commission turned it down.
Right.
Yeah, you got that.
Is it not on here? Then I missed it.
No, it's on there. It says approved.
What? Does it say approved under? Oh, I gotcha. Under development applications and other reviews. So,
Which one we looking at?
That's the sum.
That's the southeast. You were talking about.
yeah, that's the southeast.
Northwest.
I'm talking about the one that,
Southeast is approved northwest.
Right.
Yep, not with that approved.
I think I just missed it. So I'll add it and bring it back to you next month. That works?
I don't know if there's anything else that we
Mhm.
might have done in that regard or not.
Yeah. So typically with these, if it came to you 3 times, I didn't say tabled. I just did this, the final result of that. So, I think
I
I
don't
just,
think tabling.
no. But that, yeah, or was that last year? Is that possible that was last? Did we deny that
Last-
right, prior to June? I will check. I will check.
Remember it, but it might have been before I joined,
I'd be inclined to say we.
It might have been right before I joined,
That we
actually.
tabled on it,
which could have been January.
in order not to
last year.
lose.
I know, I
Yeah.
can remember it, because I,
But it's not,
but I wasn't.
it's
on the
not an
planning commission.
action.
It's an action,
The tabling is an action?
sure, it's a decision.
Yeah. Do you guys want tabling to be on this?
I'm quite-
It's an activity of
Yeah.
the commission.
Okay.
It's an activity to decide that decision.
So you guys want everything that was tabled to be part of the report as well?
If we table something,
Follow up on that.
Right, if we tabled it and we haven't ever gotten back to it, then maybe it would still be a pending action, but if we dealt with it, I would. I would. Yeah.
Okay. Right, that's what I was thinking. So final action taken, okay.
Final action, which be better.
Yeah.
Will this serve as the required written annual report for the Board of Trustees?
It will indeed.
Okay, so I need to sign it.
Yes,
Secretary.
I've written on this one, so now.
That's why this is a draft.
Yeah.
With that, then we're on to election of officers, which I feel is a little fun in such a small group. And I'm not sure the best way to handle it, but I think the best way is to start with the chair and then the vice chair and secretary. That works for you? It does. So I would nominate Dave Finance as continuing chair. Planning commission, and I'm willing to do it. You are welcome. Yeah. That's it.
I'll say it. I would second.
This is where it feels really odd. Like, all right, let's get on with life. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. All right. Vice President. Thank you. My term ends a year from now. May 31. But I can't. I'm term limited. Len told me he's not here to speak for himself, but he told me he does not want to be chair.
Oh,
Ergo does not want to be vice chair. I think the vice chair needs to be looking at being the chair come next spring. And in between, I would like to see them coming to some of the meetings I have with Nita, pre-meetings. And getting to know that and possibly chair a few meetings. I would say that I started chairing meetings and I found out at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Before the meeting. There are better ways to break it. And that was during the short term. Anyway, that's kind of my expectation. I'm not gonna.
did Len give you a reason?
He's busy. He, like tonight, he's gone. He's gone by the record, but fairly often, and he's working on the community building. So I think there may be other things. Maybe he just doesn't like you. I wish he could.
Well, for vice chair, then I would nominate Tom.
Further discussion? Harry, you have any hands up?
Oh, well, accept.
Yeah. See. All right. Call for a vote. All in favor of Tom for vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Tom.
And now we're to secretary. Dennis has been serving in the secretary for.
Ever.
Yeah.
I would nominate Stephanie for secretary.
I don't think I'm opposed necessarily. I don't,
Yes.
I guess.
Second. Right, and they're all, Dennis will cover the ropes.
Oh, yeah.
It's-
We got at least 8 hours of training.
All right, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Thank you, Stephanie.
Piece of cake.
Thanks.
moving on. That takes care of election of officers with other business. I would like to let in. I don't know, what's on here.
pardon me.
Yeah.
There's also the review of the bylaws and some of the
Oh,
governance
is
stuff.
that part of the?
Yep, I just wanted to spend 5 minutes on it, not a long time, so we can do that now or after reports.
If that was supposed to be part of the governance, let's do it now.
Okay, very good.
That's what I was intending, thinking about.
Okay. So this is, I added a bunch of fun reading to your packets, and this is just a reminder of best practices. So the bylaws are here. They talk about how the planning commission is meant to operate. There might be a couple of things we want to update going forward. I think maybe wait until things are a little bit calmer after the master plan is done. But it talks about what our standing rules are and whatnot. Want to remind you that all your communications are subject to the Freedom of Information Act. So just please be mindful of that in your communications. I don't see any issues with this commission or anything that's going on, but that is something that can be read and published in the newspaper and asked for and provided by anyone. So that includes your emails and any other communications you have.
And use your part-timeship email.
Yes.
to
Yes.
Do that. Would be a lot happier.
Mhm. Yeah, that's really important in the very unlikely event you find yourself in the middle of a lawsuit.
Yeah.
Open Meetings Act, again, just a reminder, any business that's conducted where there is a quorum of members present is considered a public meeting. It needs to be open to the public. It needs to be noticed. So again, be careful about that. We've been advised by legal counsel also to be careful about things like doing reply alls to emails, things like that. Again, not something that we've seen, but just like to be as a reminder, you are always free to talk to me about anything and any questions that you may have. You can talk to the chair, you can talk, individually, but getting together as a group, that sort of thing is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. We just want to stay up and up for that. Also, this has a lot of information too about things that we take care of on a staff level, things like noticing and that sort of thing. So that is part of that as well. I think I have a couple examples in there. Might not have meant to include that one. Email there to conflict of interest. So if there's conflict of interest, it's generally defined more as a fiduciary conflict. So if you have some sort of business relationship, it can also be, for example, we saw this with one application recently. If you live next door to something, you're not an unbiased party. And so you should recuse yourself from that. Either sit with the public or preferably leave the room so you don't bias the proceedings within the governing body. So that is a conflict of interest. Ex parte, thank you. So this is an important one because this is one I think that actually is the easiest one to kind of step into. And basically what it means is that every action of the body needs to be fully informed by the whole body. And if there's information that one member is receiving, that's information that the entirety of the decision-making body should have access to. So if you're having side conversations with people about an application or something like that, it's really more specifically applications as opposed to, if someone comes and talks to you about food trucks, then by all means share that, but it's a little more specific to applications. But any side conversation, you are allowed to have them, but there's something that should be reported to the whole planning commission. Hey, I had this conversation. You don't necessarily need to identify the person with a neighbor, with a so-and-so. This was the content of the conversation.
Let me interject here. The most helpful thing to me about ex parte that I've been told is ask them to attend. We've had something to say, something to say it so everybody can hear it. You can explain it better than I can. So
That's good.
and one other thing at the top of that page that I thought was really good clarification. Planning commissions and ZBAs are administrative. They are duty bound to make decisions based on standards of the zoning ordinance, not on what you think the popular majority. That is the job of the elected people. So we operate by the rules. If a bunch of people come up and say, but I don't like that you have to say we have to go by the rules. If you want to change, then you better go talk to the elected.
This is important because when the ZBA has a fill-in person, even though they have expertise in the area, they sometimes don't understand that they're not an elected official. And so they tend to lean towards what the public seems to be in agreement about. When in basis, because of the ordinance specificity, it might not be allowed. So this is a very important consideration.
Not create by rule, they're responsible to the public. Yeah. Anything else on that?
Nope, that is your annual governance refresher.
All right. Zoning Board of Appeals report.
Yes,
Was there something, I think we could have a sheet in here, a record number of. Or something.
we had 6 motions. But I must say that they were presented well by the applicants. The reasoning used for the requests were solid. They met the standards, and all 6 motions were approved. Only one motion had one naysayer, and that's a new person on the board. So I think that the meeting was very effective and it accomplished its purpose.
Summary of the board.
Just one comment in that regard, excuse me. The board did make a decision that they want to go through the master plan. And so we started with the first 2 chapters and just spent a little time discussing it. Nothing shocking out of that discussion at all. But just so you're aware, we're actually going through it, you know, as a board, as opposed to all of a sudden in the middle of July, we say approved. We'll actually have spent time looking at it.
Great.
And discussing it.
Okay, and generally happy with what they're seeing.
Yeah, I think they're very pleased. I think they're more than pleased. I think they understand the amount of effort and time it went into it and have expressed that. And feel that it's a really strong, great document. So.
There's one note here that there's a power from Charter Township in that.
Yep, I actually have just 2 short notes. This is just for your information. They're legally required to provide this for us. I took a look at it. It's not close to us. I don't think it really has much impact on Park Township. It is. It is.
They are killing the agricultural land in Holland Charter.
They are providing all the housing. Yeah, and then one other brief thing, we are looking for applicants for the zoning board of appeals. We don't have enough to conduct interviews yet. I think we've gotten maybe 1 or 2 applications. We really need to have a few applications in order to fill a vacant seat that we have there. And we would like to fill that. So think about your friends, think about your neighbors, think about people who you know, who you think would be good for that role. We'd really like to have a handful of solid applicants so that we can build that board as well. So there was an announcement online. I will see what I can find. I didn't post it, so yep, I don't actually do that part of it, but I'll find out and I'll send it to you.
Do you have a description, a job description? Because the last member who was added is just outstanding, Crystal Morgan. Mm-hmm. And her background in property law really assists in making tough decisions. So I would hope that we're kind of looking at a pool that represents that kind of expertise.
And I don't actually have an answer for that. I think that's a great question. So I'll find out. And I think if we don't have one, we'll see what we can do to put one together. Excellent.
And my last question is, Port Sheldon Township is redoing their master plan. And some of the things they're deciding on will affect a number of of people in Park Township who have an interest in public access and fishing. So I would hope that they're coordinating with us in terms of what they're looking to put in their master plan.
Yeah, there was intended to be a stakeholders meeting a couple weeks ago that staff was invited to, and it was canceled. And they said that it was going to be rescheduled. So I don't have anything up to date on that, but I can look into that as well.
For the benefit of the commission, the Campbell plant will be closing. And part of their facilities is a public access to Lake Michigan and to the Pigeon River. And a lot of property owners up there would like not to have people coming up and recreating and parking in their areas. So I'm sure there'll be a somewhat of a localized or patriotical pushback on that. We're hoping that we don't have any issues, but that is a marvelous opportunity for people to get out on the water, either to recreate or to fish. So we want to preserve that.
That county park is there. It's a county park.
But there's also a private access, and they want the right side.
Yes.
Yes.
Yep,
It's
that's the key.
like,
Well, is there really?
if you're driving
On their
over,
property?
you drive,
Yeah.
like, kind of, I can leave that.
That right on the river.
Yeah,
Mhm.
right behind, yeah.
I've never been there. You get,
Yeah.
how do you get there? No, I didn't. Sorry.
Okay, I have one other thing. Anybody else?
Yeah, I do. If I may.
Yeah.
I have two things. One, I don't know if you saw the article in the Sentinel regarding Saugatuck taking steps toward caps on their short-term rentals. And so the city of Sauk, and this is just information about what's going on with STRs in a neighborhood or a community in south of it. But the city has agreed to implement new fines and fees for rental owners as the best guide and best guide practices. And so at the last community planning session, they announced that there are currently 278 rental units in Saugatuck, 115 of which are located in R1. The next highest was C1 City Center with 21. And then the commission, in a split vote, the commission erred on the side of limitations, deciding 4-3 to recommend council support a limit of licenses in R1 district equal to 20% of all dwellings. It's interesting. Then the second thing I have is, I wonder if anyone else had the same delivery of their packet with lots of mistakes in terms of photographing. So page 3 was on the back of page 1 and on the next section. Thank you. Yeah, there's a little shortfall in quality assurance.
Well, I would like to say I appreciate putting on both sides to say.
Oh, I have no
Yes.
doubt about that,
Thank you.
but I no doubt, but I don't need page 3 on the backside of page 1 of the next section. And in addition to that, I had 2 complete sets.
And it may say that they were consistent.
Okay.
Yes.
And that's a good thing, because then we can improve the quality.
It's a heck of a start.
Yeah. One last thing, Mika, I don't think I'm letting the cat out of the bag or anything, is I understand that the board is going to bring the next phase of the park. The Township Park, bring the site plan to the plan. So that we will get. And I think that is what
The intent is that would be in August,
would be what
August.
in August. So just so you know that's coming and let it rattle around in your head and stuff. So, but I think it's the way it should be.
Yeah. Thanks for mentioning that, because that is correct.
Oh, and they opened the pickleball courts And there was a pretty good crowd there, right? 150 people, yeah.
I think there was at least 100 people there. It was a very nice turnout. Nice ribbon ceremony. I think their manager Howard Fink did a nice job getting it organized along with our recreation director Brian.
Yep.
And it was a funny event. You know, I even played for 20 minutes, maybe 5.
Yeah.
I tell you, I won. I am undefeated.
That's a good way to go.
Yeah.
I warmed up with other board members, and then I played Howard Fink's son, Elliot, and I won.
Good. We're playing again. You'll be undefeated for the rest of your life. Okay, nothing else?
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Mr. Second.
Mr. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you all. And now we have 20 minutes until the big debate.
No, I've been on for 40 minutes already.